Do you remember back in the last US election run-up, Trump appeared in Bitcoin Nashville, man. He's like, yeah, Bitcoin, baby, let's go. He's a pro-crypto candidate. Got elected. Released fucking Trump coin. Now, Bitcoin surged to all-time highs. We did get the Trump pump. But since then, you got to be asking the question, Donald, where's our Bitcoin strategic reserve at, dog? Look, time flies in crypto, and that all seems like a long, long time ago now. It was only a year ago, guys. Holy crap. But in several important ways, Trump definitely has given a huge boost to the cryptocurrency sector, especially through changes at the SEC. So the commission's now pro-crypto instead of trying to kill the industry. We've got the Clarity Act coming. We have the Genius Act, which has cleared the way for stable coins to integrate in traditional financial system. A lot of good things have happened under Trump for crypto. Very specifically, okay? And I know he's enriched his pockets a lot, okay? Don't get me wrong. But where's our strategic Bitcoin reserve at, man? Now, I know America is currently holding the Bitcoin that it has, but are they going to buy more? There has been some questionable decisions, like Trump coin, like Melania coin really ended everything, didn't it? Your view of the Trump meme coin launch probably depends on whether you're banked profits from the insane rally or lost a shit ton of money on it, okay? That run was usually profitable if you got in minutes after he tweeted the contract address, but also marked the top for meme coins, the top for Solana for a while, and Melania token was just a nightmare. It was the end of all things, okay? It was the nail in the coffin for meme coins. But getting back to the policy matters, a huge narrative formed up when Trump got elected, and that was the National Strategic Bitcoin Reserve, and for good reason. The details were a bit fuzzy at the time. The general idea was that if it happened, it would mean the US would start stockpiling a giant stack of Bitcoin, and where the US led, other nations would follow. Now, we've seen moves from other nations since then, but the idea is Bitcoin gets fully legitimized as digital gold at an international level. The sovereign bid pumps our bags in ways never seen before. We all get to cash out and ride into the sunset as central banks buy our coins. This is a permanent shift in the hierarchy of global assets. This was all incredibly exciting, but recently, even though US spot Bitcoin ETFs now hold $121 billion in total assets under management, even Vanguard's opened up the door to crypto, you don't hear so much talk about that US Bitcoin reserve. So he did sign a bill that said, yes, we're going to hold the current Bitcoin, the stuff that we've gotten from seizures and whatnot. But will they start buying? Is a reserve that buys Bitcoin, that finds ways to get Bitcoin off the table for now? Well, the answer to that is no. A reserve can still happen, as was formally laid out by the White House in March this year. And there's a route by which the Trump administration could be about to buy up to 1 million Bitcoin. And that might sound like a crazily high number. In fact, it's around 5% of the total Bitcoin supply. It's even more than Michael Saylor has, okay? But here's how it can happen. First off, let's note, well, before we get into that, guys, if you want to trade Bitcoin, if you want to trade Ethereum, XRP, Solana, whatever you want to trade, you got to listen up because this one's a no-brainer, okay? Femex, one of the most secure exchanges in crypto, is literally paying you insane sign-up bonuses right now. Deposit $5,000, $500 cash back. Deposit $10,000, $1,000 cash back. $20,000, $1,600 cash back. Plus, you can get up to $20,000 in trading bonuses. The more you trade, the more money they're going to put back in your pocket. Look, I've traded over there for years. They're reliable, they're liquid, they're global, meaning anyone, anywhere can use Femex. You might need a VPN in some cases. This offers a limited time offer. Check out the link down below to get signed up and claim that offer today. So let's get back to this conversation. Look, sovereign wealth funds are already buying Bitcoin. We have proof of that. We know other countries are discussing buying Bitcoin too. But here's some evidence of some sovereigns that are already buying. In October, Luxembourg bought Bitcoin via an ETF. Abu Dhabi is an ETF buyer back in 2024. Norway has invested in Bitcoin-related stocks like MicroStrategy. Recently, Larry Fink of BlackRock made a revealing statement on stage at the New York Times Deal Book Summit when he explained that several sovereign wealth funds are buying Bitcoin right now on this dip, okay? That's according to Larry Fink, the master of the financial universe. Somebody who would probably know, okay? He says they've been scooping up sats in the 80K range and much higher too. And they're buying for long-term holding, not as a trade. These guys are more price insensitive. They don't care if they get it at 80 or 100K. They'll buy it at 80K if you sell it to them, but they're going to hold for 10 or 20 years. So what about the USA? Is Trump really going to let himself get left behind on this? Other countries are actively stacking. Why not America? It looks unlikely that Trump will just let it all pass by. And part of the reason actually ties in with America's physical gold supplies, as we'll see next. Importantly, we need to be aware here that when it comes to America buying BTC, the plan is to use a budget-neutral strategy. That means not buying Bitcoin using your tax money, not increasing the debt to buy Bitcoin. Now, one way to do this, as Scott Bessent explained, is by keeping hold of all of the government-seized Bitcoin, which is what they've done. They have their strategic Bitcoin reserve, and they're holding the seized Bitcoin. But it's not moving the needle because it's not going to add buy pressure. That's what we want. But that's not the only budget-neutral path. And that's where physical gold comes into the picture. Basically, when it comes to America's gold, a key issue is that on the Treasury balance sheet, it's wildly underpriced. It's such a stupid accounting thing, but it's real. Officially, on the US's balance sheet, the gold is priced at $42 an ounce, even though gold is currently trading at $4,200 an ounce. It's so stupid. It's a huge difference. That comes down to the $42 price having been set in 1973 and then just never having been revisited. Governments are so stupid, man. That's ridiculous. And that means officially America's gold is valued at around $890 billion. But if it were to be revalued to current market prices, it would be worth over $1 trillion. Furthermore, there is precedent for this kind of revaluation that's happened previously in countries like Italy, Germany, and South Africa. So perhaps you can see where all this is going. If the USA revalues its gold, that additional capital can be used to fund Bitcoin purchases for a strategic reserve. This method could credibly be presented as a budget-neutral plan. And if you're thinking this might just be some kind of crackpot theory that Lark's coming up with, internet man's coming up with some crazy shit again, man, this is actually exactly what was outlined by Congressman Nick Begich. Begich, what a guy. Anyway, he's an OG Bitcoiner. He specifically mentions, in reference to how much BTC the government should acquire, a figure of 1 million BTC, supported by Cynthia Loomis, by the way, OG Bitcoiner herself. Also, Begich went through all this while talking in detail about the Bitcoin Act. This is a piece of legislation sponsored by Senator Cynthia Loomis that, if it gets the go-ahead, will be dedicated to the establishment of a strategic Bitcoin reserve, an active strategic Bitcoin reserve where they're actually accumulating Bitcoin, not just holding stuff they've seized from hackers and scammers. And speaking of Cynthia Loomis, she recently reignited speculation with a cryptic tweet about big things coming. Well, we probably shouldn't read too much into that, to be honest. You can see how the conversation continues. The strategic reserve chatter isn't just abstract ideas. We have actual policymakers who want to see this happen, who understand the future, who understand that Bitcoin is the money of energy. There are real legislative moves in process that can actually lead to the US government acquiring, stockpiling Bitcoin. We haven't even mentioned they could use fucking tariff revenue. Tariff revenue could be used. That's a very simple lift, to be honest, because it's not taken away from you, the taxpayer. They're just taking money that they acquired from a non-you source. We still need to be a little cautious here because the Bitcoin Act right now hasn't progressed farther than being introduced into Congress. The possibility of a gold revaluation is still just that, a possibility. Using tariff revenue, still just that, a possibility. Okay, there's no concrete plan here. However, the point here is that there is a clear route by which the strategic Bitcoin reserve can happen, where the US can actually find those budget neutral ways to buy 1 million Bitcoin. And if it does, then keep in mind that recent short-term price volatility will not matter at all. And that if you want to position yourself, you can't buy after the US starts buying because the price will be too high. You can only buy now to front run this potential reality. That's it. Thanks for watching.